Welcome to Deadline Contenders, documentary and unscripted. Really happy here to talk about the Oscars. When is it not fun to talk about the Oscars? And this was a very successful Oscar show. The ratings were up, the movies were good, the show was fun. So, what's not to like? Let me introduce our panel here. First up, she's an executive producer, and that would be, and a writer also, Molly McNeary. Also a veteran of the Oscars is Raj Kapoor, who was serving as executive producer, but he's done many things. I think about 7 shows previously, maybe, Raj? Yeah.
That is correct.
Right.
Yep.
There you go. First timer for the Oscar show, however, but certainly not to award shows and live shows. Executive producer Katie Mullen. Hi, how are you?
Very good, thank you. Pleased to be here.
And we are joined by this year's director of the Oscars. He's returning after having directed it 2015 and 2014. So I think this is your third time, Hamish. Hamish is unique. He's the only person who is an EGOS winner, in a sense. Emmy, Grammy, Oscar, and Super Bowl halftime director holds the record. Very,
I like that. I
yeah.
like that.
I'm not done, Hamish. All 10 of the most watched shows in television history, you are a director on.
Yeah. That's pretty good, right? I mean, yeah.
That's
Yeah.
pretty impressive. Not to mention 11 Emmy nominations. Okay, but I digress. Let's talk about the Oscars. This was obviously hosted again by Jimmy Kimmel, and I'm going to show you a little clip from this year's show. It is Jimmy's monologue. So let's take a look.
Emma Stone is an Oscar nominee for a 5th time, right? The 5th time. And she is, Emma, you are so unbelievably great in Poor Things. Emma played an adult woman with the brain of a child, like the lady who gave the rebuttal to the State of the Union on Thursday night. And you were just amazing. There were so many great movies that held audiences captive this year. And I mean that literally. Your movies were too long this year. The average length of the top 10 movies was 2 hours and 23 minutes. That's up 30 minutes from 3 years ago. When I went to see Killers of the Flower Moon, I had my mail forwarded to the theater. Killers of the Flower Moon is so long, in the time it takes you to watch it, you could drive to Oklahoma and solve the murders yourself.
I'm watching that again and I'm thinking, God, it's taking me back to Bob Hope. He's doing it so effortlessly with working in the movies and jokes about the movies. And that's what Jimmy had said before the show, that he really thinks it's about the movies and that the monologue should be about that and everything else, Molly. And so he pretty much kept to that. That's a very tough audience to play to, that live audience. And so it's sometimes known as a thankless job, but he seemed to have pulled it off. And it seems like the Oscars are getting comfortable to watch again after a few years where they weren't. So, what was it like on this one, putting this one together for you?
I agree. I think he does it effortlessly, but it is definitely not without effort. We start writing those jokes around December, and then we really fire it up when we know what the nominated films are. And Jimmy likes to, talk to people in the audience. Those are all, relatively friendly humans who he has on the show. So he wants to be a little edgy, but not too edgy where we can't book the show anymore. So I think that he does a really good job of balancing that. And he has to remember there's an audience at home that is also so a lot of jokes we write are a little too inside. We want to make sure that the home audience can enjoy them as well. And I think he did a really great job. I think it was really fun. And I think thankfully, because of this team, it turned out really great.
How many jokes do you write? And is it the staff of Jimmy Kimmel Live, writing staff, that goes along with it?
Well, this year we did something new, which I thought worked really well. We used the staff at Jimmy Kimmel Live. So all of Jimmy's writers, there are 19 on staff that really know his voice very well. And we also teamed with the incomparable John Max, who is an excellent award show writer. And he had 3 writers of his own who were exceptional. And we did everything together. So if they had a monologue joke they wanted to throw to us, we looked at that. If they needed a little help with presenter copy, or if we had a great idea for that, we worked together. A lot of times it's, at least in my experience in the past, there it was Jimmy's writers wrote the monologue, and then the award show writers wrote the presenter copy. But this year we all worked together, which was really great.
Yeah. And Raj and Katie, this show was supposed to start an hour earlier than normal. And you did, when I interviewed you before, as Katie knows, you did promise surprises. The first surprise was the show wasn't on for 5 minutes when it was supposed to be, which I imagine sitting there in the audience, the producers are now officially freaking out. That is so unusual that the show at least doesn't start on time. What happened, Raj? What went on here?
we wanted to start on time. We had several challenges. We had daylight savings time. It was the first year that we were starting so early, and it was just a little bit of a challenge getting everybody into the theater, and that was the only reason we weren't able to start on time. It's like it was a little bit of logistics. It was everybody getting used to this new start time, and we really wanted as many people in that room as possible at the start of the show, and Bob Iger actually made the call, and we did our best to accommodate that. And that's why this team is probably one of the best in the business. They all rose to the occasion. This broadcast is around the entire world, and everybody came to. There was a solution to it. So hopefully everybody at home was sympathetic to what that was, and they were still entertained. But we made the decision together to make sure that our room was full, that Jimmy had everybody he needed for the opening monologue, and it was just really important to start it with the right tone. We did not. We needed everybody in that room in order for it to be successful, and it was the right call this year. We want to start on time again, so we need everybody to leave a little bit earlier and get in the room a little earlier, and we'll be good.
It was funny when Rob Mills said to Jimmy, he's like, we'll just start 5 minutes late. And Jimmy's like, we can do that? He didn't even know that was a possibility. But we were really grateful that they made that decision for us.
Yeah, I had no idea you could do that. That was interesting. Katie, I mean, so putting this together, this is the most talked about, the most watched, the most gone over. Every little detail people are debating for weeks ahead of time. What is the pressure like on you? This was your first time producing the Oscars. Is it different from some of the other shows you've done?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there is a huge amount of pressure to make it fantastic. And, Molly, Jimmy, the writers start early. The production design started 6 months, maybe 8 months before, like ideating around that. We watched all the films. We debated it all ourselves. Like we knew that everybody at home was going to be looking at every single detail. So we were doing exactly the same thing. We were looking at that rundown. We were looking at how we could make every single award different or elevated or interesting or creatively approached, how we could approach music, performance, talent in a way that kind of told a story, kept the pace up, and just really was compelling, because these things are really long. And, you've got, in order for an audience to stay with you for 3.5 hours through 23 awards, you've got to keep them entertained. And so that was really, our job. And we took it very seriously. Like, we had a lot of fun doing it, but we really thought about every single detail. And it was the best team that we could have brought together to do it, because everybody cared so much and everyone was so passionate about making it, humorous, heartfelt, and just making it a really, really, really entertaining show.
Yeah, exactly. I have to ask you about the I'm Just Ken number, which is also one of the most talked about production numbers in recent Oscars, with Ryan Gosling and all of those people on stage. Just the logistics of that, Katie, I can't imagine. You're producing a show, like a big Broadway show there with that number.
Yeah, I mean, there was a moment when we were all sitting at the producers' table and the first rehearsal, and there was like 60, 70 Kens everywhere in that theater, and Ryan Gosling walking it through with the incredible Mandy Moore, who was choreographing it with him. And I think all of us were like complete, like we're having an out of body experience. It was so fun to be able to do a performance like that on that scale on one of the biggest stages in the world was like a real like bucket list moment, because everybody wanted to see Ken sing live. It took a lot of work and collaboration and effort into making that moment happen. And Ryan went out there and absolutely nailed it. And I personally, I know people who've watched it like 65 times and are obsessed with it still.
Molly
So,
has watched it 65 times.
Yep.
It is amazing. There's a lot to see there, and the audience interaction. Hamish, getting your cameras on Greta Gerwig rocking out with all of the Barbie people, and all of that. Capturing it there. Obviously you planned for all this, but there was that kind of communal feeling in the entire theater, I think. Right? Yeah.
Yeah, on any great number like that, in any great show, there's a huge amount of planning. The story beats, the choreography beats, the emotional beats, but you can't stick to a rigid plan, because, as you said, you miss the chemistry in the room, and that it's 50% kind of planning and calling it to the plan you've got, and then finding those moments that are out there in the room. I mean, it's, again, you can see I'm smiling. It was just such, it's honestly, to a live director, credit to the producers, that's a bit of a gift, isn't it? I mean, come on. I'd have to have a very bad day to mess that up, really.
One of the things I think we felt was pure joy, helping create that number. It started with Ryan. There was a reference to Diamonds Are a Girl's Best Friend meets Ken, because he didn't want to do something that had been done before, and then really involving our whole team. So like when we watched it back, you could feel the joy just from the small amount of people in the theater and everybody who was there experiencing the rehearsals of it. But then when you watched it on television, it really became infectious. Like, there was so much happiness and celebration, and I don't think it was just about that. It was really about people being together again, in that room, celebrating amazing movies, and then celebrating this great moment together. We made people happy, I think, at that moment.
And I think you made people happy by having John Cena come out not wearing any clothes.
Excuse me, he had Birkenstocks on.
Oh. Indeed. Well, so much fun talking to you again, and doing a little post-mortem here on the Oscars. Are you all planning to hopefully come back again next year? Jimmy just sort of said the other day, hey, maybe I'll do it again, so who knows, huh?
Yeah, we'll see. I think it's too early to make that decision now, but I really hope this team is reunited, because I think there's no one better than this one.
And the audience response was great. Ratings were good. And congratulations to all of you. And thank you for joining us here on our Contenders event. Thanks a lot, guys.
Thanks, Pete.